The biggest piece of advice that I can give you in this moment is to hit this quirky little button right here, but I highly doubt any of you are going to listen to my dumbass telling you to uninstall the game you just bought, so let's move on to some actual tips. This is an indicator. You block by putting your guard in its direction by moving your mouse. You parry by pressing right click when it does this funny little white flash. Parrying lets you get a free light attack off. Some characters, however, get special shit on a regular parry. Read this cool little list of your character's moves before going into a game to have a better idea of what you can do, or you can jump into the training mode and check out how your moves function. Characters in this game interact with base mechanics in a variety of ways. The majority can get a light attack off on a regular parry. Jormungandr can smash a ribcage into splinters off of a parry, and Lawbringer can pull out an entire encyclopedia on ways to cave your skull in, redo your rights, and then give you 8 types of brain damage all at the same time from one parry. But hey, everyone still says he needs Hyperarmour, so I guess he's not good. But yeah, that's a few interesting basic ways that some characters can interact with a parry mechanic. There's way more mechanics and way more characters to interact with them in funny ways, but describing all of these is way outside the time limit of me making this video. With each passing moment, the half a gram of caffeine working its way through my bloodstream gets closer to wearing off, at which point I will forget how to be funny, so let's move along, shall we? This is an unblockable attack, and as the name clearly states, you can't block it. You can, however, parry it, dodge it, or just ignore it and get your skull split in half. You can also just throw an attack and opt for a damage trade if you have Hyperarmour. What's Hyperarmour? That's this flash thingy that makes you not get interrupted when the 4 kilograms of sharpened steel turns your femoral artery into a reference about the current state of your father's brake cables. But hey, how does that make any sense? It doesn't, but this guy's fat and it looks funny, so whatever. Realistically, you shouldn't really be relying on Hyperarmour. For one, not all characters you're playing are going to actually have it, and for two, good players are going to destroy you if you're completely reliant on it. It can be useful for trading hits or for anti-ganking, which I will go into further later, but overall, you shouldn't rely on it too heavily. A few years ago, only the heavy class and a few of the bulkier hybrid heroes had solid Hyperarmour, but at this point, the majority of the cast has it in some form. All of the characters on screen right now circled in red have a lot of Hyperarmour. The ones in orange only have an attack or a few attacks with Hyperarmour, and the rest have no Hyperarmour. Oh, and also if you're currently noticing a difference in my microphone quality or settings, that's because the rest of this video was recorded 8 months ago. We will now continue. This is a deflect. Only assassin characters, and specifically Shaolin as a hybrid, can use them. They are harder to pull off than a parry, requiring you to dodge into the funny white flash of an attack instead of pressing right click. Not only are they harder to pull off, but they're also a lot riskier. A lot of the time when you're learning how to deflect, you will end up just eating heavies. They do, however, look very fucking cool, and are useful for chaining into your next combo. They essentially just flow better than parries. Much like parries, a lot of characters have different methods of interacting with the deflect mechanic. Peacekeeper, for instance, can get a basic stab afterward by hitting right-click, which she can then chain into any of her other combos. Orochi harnesses his inner weeb by, for some reason, showing his back to his opponent. Yeah, anime, I guess. And, Berserker gets a free guard break for some reason. Oh, also, I forgot to mention this, but you cannot deflect unblockable attacks. Unblockable attacks will go right through it, and you will eat the damage. They can only be parried. Unblockable attacks can only be parried. And while we're on the topic of Berserker's guard break deflect, the guard break mechanic is typically the most annoying mechanic for new players to learn how to deal with. Because, for some reason, none of the tutorials actually go in depth or teach you anything about the different ways you can end up guard broken. In fact, the tutorials for this game in general are painfully outdated and don't teach you anything about the majority of the hardest to fight characters in the game. They also don't teach you about good team play, and don't even show you how to avoid getting guard broken in most cases. Anyway, little mini rant aside, when you get guard broken, you typically press the guard break button to counter it and push the enemy backwards, like this. If you're new to the game, you may find that sometimes you find that this mechanic doesn't work. Well, this is because of something called guard break vulnerability. At the start of a dodge or a dodge attack, you're vulnerable to being guard broken, meaning you can't counter it and the enemy will get a guard break. At the very start of a heavy attack, you are also vulnerable. After or during certain attacks that your character may have, you will also be vulnerable to being guard broken. Warmonger, for instance, can be guard broken straight out of a heavy dodge attack even if she's halfway through it. Lawbringer can be guard broken directly after he tries to throw his polearm attack. He is vulnerable to being guard broken the minute it ends. This is just 2 examples. I'd recommend going into training and messing around with a bot to see what can and cannot be guard broken on the character you're playing. I almost forgot to mention this, but just like parries and deflects, there are a few ways that some characters can interact with the guard break mechanic, but these are much less prominent than the other goofy shit with deflects and parries. Only a handful of characters have unique ways of interacting with the guard break mechanic. Warlord can do this little charge thingy. Raider can pick you up and carry you away for some reason. I am definitely forgetting another 1 or 2 guard break mechanic things, but it doesn't matter a whole lot. It won't change your experience all that much. Okay, on to the next annoying mechanic. This one's a doozy. This is one that even good players often find annoying. The feinting mechanic. What's a feint? Well, that's when you press E, or I'm not sure what the button is on controller, but the feint input, and cancel your attack halfway through it, just like this. Only heavy attacks and unblockables can typically be feinted, but there are a lot of characters that can feint things like dodge attacks, undodgeable attacks. Oh, right, undodgeable attacks also exist too. This blue mist surrounding an attack means you can't dodge it. Anyway, back to feinting. Some characters can even feint out bash attacks, like this. There's also another type of feint which I fully believe shouldn't be in the game. The soft feint, which is when you don't actually have to cancel your attack, but you rather just press another input and change what attack you're doing at the last moment. Raider can cancel this unblockable, for instance, straight into a guard break. Kensei can also do the same thing as Raider, but they can also cancel out a heavy attack into a light of another direction. And, this guy? Yeah, this is Aramusha, and, he can go away. He can get the hell out of here, right now. Yeah, go away. Anyway, going back to, bashes that I mentioned a second ago, this is a bash. They typically don't do any damage on their own and only push you backwards, but oftentimes characters can just follow up a bash with a guaranteed to hit light attack, or in some instances even a heavy attack that's guaranteed to hit. The only way to counter a bash is to dodge it, or if it's a slower bash, you can just hit the enemy with a light attack to cancel it. However, bashes can also have Hyperarmour, meaning the only option is to dodge it if their bash does have Hyperarmour. And yes, all of this is as brain dead and annoying as it sounds, but eventually you get used to it. If you play this game, you've likely encountered all of the following 3 types of play styles. That one guy that just constantly spams light attacks. The one guy that constantly bashes and then light attacks you and you can't do anything about it. The guy that constantly spams the same move over and over and you don't know how to counter it. Anyway, here's how to deal with these people, step by step. If the enemy you're fighting is spamming light attacks, the best thing you can do is stay calm. Don't get stressed out, even if you're taking damage from it. Just take a step back mentally and then try to calm yourself down and deliberately move your mouse to block each incoming light. You'll very quickly find that they aren't as fast as you thought. Typically, when a light attack hits your block, the enemy will stagger momentarily and move backwards. This is your opportunity to ruin their day. When they stagger, you have the advantage of being able to light them before they can recover and attack again. Do this until they get bored. Block, they stagger, attack them back. And eventually, they're gonna get tired of it. As you get more experience, you'll be able to get better and better at countering light attacks. Once you've sunk enough time into the game, you will just find yourself parrying light attacks quite often, which will allow you to get a free top heavy on the enemy. Light parries stun enemies for a long time. Lights are cool and all until someone parries you and you eat an attitude adjustment to your forehead. You ever see this guy? Yeah, I mean this guy, playing this character specifically. Yeah, me too. There are 2 ways to deal with this. The easiest one is
second option is take a moment to chill as you did with light spam. Try to look at what your opponent is doing and find the pattern, which will typically end up just being, I spam bash. Once you realize this, it's going to become a lot easier. You can just bait them into attempting a bash, and then you dodge, or dodge attack, ideally, to get free damage when they try to bash you. This will typically put you at a serious advantage, but don't get frustrated if these people beat you. Eventually, you will become this, while they continue being this. The third type of person is arguably the easiest one to counter. My personal method of learning to deal with them was going into training, picking the character that I couldn't beat as the enemy bot, starting at level 1 difficulty. I would then fight the bot until I could beat it. I would then move it up to level 2, and rinse and repeat until I can beat that and the level 3. I would also recommend trying to play as the characters that you struggle against. It'll give you a better idea of what they can do, and just overall game sense. But yeah, I'd recommend playing as them whether it be online or just in training against bots. It'll give you a better idea of what you can do to counter them. A good example of being able to counter things like this is, for instance, when Raider does his unblockable into Guardbreak attack, you can actually, if you time it correctly, if you think it's coming, you can actually dodge attack and completely just negate it.
They're gonna throw every single feat at you.
And yes, they are.
And finally, onto the most frustrating part of the game, the revenge system. You either love it, or you hate it. Your position on this will often change depending on which side of it you're on. This right here, yeah, that's your revenge bar. When you're outnumbered, as in there's more enemies fighting you than there are of you, which is, just typically the one, but yeah, when you're outnumbered, you'll see this go up, or fill up, I suppose, but it does have some more complexity to it than that. Revenge works on a tag-based system, so let's say one person hits you, that's a tag. You get hit by another person within the next few seconds, that's another tag. This second tag will make your revenge bar begin going up. If either of the enemies that hit you and tagged you hit you again within the next few seconds, your revenge bar will continue to go up. The more people there are attacking you, the faster your bar will increase. The clip that played a second before I started talking is probably one of the best anti-ganks I have actually managed to get recorded. Granted, it is because the enemy team kind of sucked doo-doo, but there's some things to point out in it. You can see here that as I parry this guy, I fill up my revenge bar, but I don't immediately activate it. I wait until I see somebody else swing at me, and then I use my revenge to knock them over. When you activate your revenge, anybody that is currently attacking you gets knocked to the ground. And then I smack him with a big old top heavy as he hits the floor. When you're in revenge, all of your attacks do more damage. So right here, you can see I do like 36 damage on that top heavy, which is like a lot. And then as he's still recovering and getting up off the ground, I hit him with an area attack to quickly finish him off so he's out of the way. Right here I aim at the guy behind this Valkyrie on my right. If you aim at somebody other than the person trying to parry you, they actually cannot parry you. And when they try to parry you, your attack will just hit them. But they can still block you. Right here I aim at the guy behind the Valkyrie so that when I swing and she tries to parry me, she just eats the heavy. And then I bait her into getting guard broken and throw her to the ground. When you're in revenge, all of your guard break throws knock people to the ground. And then I chain into an area attack before she hits the floor, which I can then chain into a top unblockable heavy. This is called a max damage punish. I'm essentially using the absolute maximum amount of attacks I can before she gets up. If I wasn't in revenge, as I started this, it would take a lot of my stamina. That's why I wouldn't really do it without revenge. Or if I need to quickly finish somebody off. But here, I can do it, and I can get all of that damage off for essentially free. And then this last guy just gets dodge attack parried and, like, murdered, so, On a side note, I woke up at like 10 a.m. and I started editing at like 11 a.m. and it is like 11 p.m. right now. I have left my desk like 3 times in the last 12 hours, and yeah, my commentary is suffering, but hopefully it isn't too bad. Anyway, that's the end for now. There are a lot of things I would have wanted to go into a little more detail on, or just other things I would have mentioned more of if I had the time. Maybe in the future I'll make a more advanced tutorial with the goofy-ass mechanics and extremely unexplainable things that this game likes to do sometimes. Maybe I'll even go into feats in another video. Yeah, like punch the screen and shit, and yeah, I'm going to bed now. Good night. Thanks for watching.